The playoffs are here, and you can predict the action all the way to the finals with FanDuel Predicts. Predict the spread, the total points, and even the game-winning moments that make the playoffs. Sign up and get a $25 bonus with FanDuel Predicts.
Offered by FanDuel Prediction Markets, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant. 18-plus bonus is non-withdrawable and expires 7 days after receipt. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with their consumer protection tools. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/predicts/bonus-offer-terms.
Katz and Cosby, entertaining and informative
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Joining us now with some big breaking news is John Solomon. Always has some great scoops. What do you got, John?
Well, this is, I think, going to be a very consequential day in election integrity. Early this morning, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. turned down the Democratic Party's request for a temporary injunction against President Trump's crackdown, the executive order cracking down on extensive mail-in voting in some states. That crackdown includes an effort by the federal government to compare state voter rolls with citizenship to make sure that non-citizens aren't voting. We're seeing a growing number of criminal cases of non-citizens being caught cheating and voting in elections. The judge not only refused to give the injunction blocking President Trump from doing this, he went line by line through the Democrats' arguments and debunked them, something he didn't have to do. But he basically said, hey, there's no evidence that you've been harmed. There's no evidence that's going to be harmful to people. There's no evidence that if someone is misidentified as a non-citizen that they can't appeal and quickly get back their voting rights. So he went through and created a very substantial judicial record of litigating the issues behind the issue. And that's going to put it on the fast track to the appeals court and potentially to the United States Supreme Court, which means President Trump's ability to crack down on mail-in voting and to do citizenship checks may get to the Supreme Court still this summer, a very big moment. A lot of people are just beginning to realize how significant an event this was today in this court with this judge. Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Bessent was very clear today. Iran is not going to have sanctions relieved until they hand over their enriched uranium. Anyone thinks the deal that President Trump and the U.S. reached today for a 60-day ceasefire includes giving them money or sanctions relief, not happening, according to Secretary Bessent, until enriched uranium is turned over. That story is getting a lot of attention as well. And then we've had some back and forth with Iran, a few military missiles going in both directions. We have the upper hand. We've knocked down their drones with them. But there is signs that Iran is trying to antagonize the United States during this negotiation. It'll be very interesting to see how tonight plays out. The U.S. military
is it the chimpanzees or the gorillas? I mean, there's two factions there.
That's it. There are multiple factions. Actually, there may be more than two. There might be 3 or 4 now.
The orangutans.
Yeah, there you go. We got the whole family. It's pretty clear that our decimation of their leadership has left them decentralized even more than normal, and that is, I think, creating some difficulty for the American. We don't know who to negotiate with. That's a pretty hard deal to deal with. But I do think that whatever happens, people are watching very closely tonight to see if there's another round of attacks or whether Iran backs down because of this tentative deal that was reached today. We're still waiting for President Trump to say he signed off on it, but his negotiating team has, and I think that's a really good sign. So those are just some of the big stories that we're watching. One other one, there's a report out there. We've been able to confirm it. The Justice Department has apparently begun a criminal investigation for perjury or false testimony against E. Jean Carroll, the woman who accused President Trump of sexual assault. That is an interesting development. I don't think a lot of people saw that one coming. We don't know what provided the genesis for that. Maybe a whistleblower, maybe some new evidence, but we're trying to get more on that. But that's another one that people are taking a close look at.
And John, you also had some interesting stuff on DOJ officials raising red flags about Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about that since we broke that a couple of days ago. I think, so let's remind everybody where we were a year ago, which was Merrick Garland said everybody was on board with raiding Mar-a-Lago, and I personally signed off it because everyone was good with it. Then we got a couple of months ago, we broke the story that the FBI had all these emails, its Washington field office, very clearly stating and warning they did not believe they had met the standard for a search warrant, which is probable cause. That was a big red flag. No one had ever heard that before. Now we know that the FBI did not believe they had probable cause to raid Mar-a-Lago. They did it anyways. Well, now we have gotten a new a memo from one of the top senior advisors to Merrick Garland, someone Merrick Garland brought in specifically to advise him to make sure they handled the Trump cases appropriately. That email shows she was not told in advance that they were going to raid Mar-a-Lago, and as soon as she found out about it, she became concerned. In fact, she said her email says, I can't stop thinking about this.
John, who is this hit squad that was doing this?
Well, that is a question. Who was in charge? And if Merrick Garland was in charge, the people around him clearly didn't see that. And so what this woman writes, and this is very important because this is something I've been consistently reporting since 2022 when the president gave me a statement on this. The president has always claimed he declassified the documents that were taken to Mar-a-Lago, that he had this standing order that if he took something to the residence, it was declassified. If he's going to work at night, the document would be declassified so he can move it out of the safe space of the Oval Office, which is where you can read classified information, and that anything that was in his residence had been declassified, and therefore there was no basis. This woman seizes on that. This 30-year career official who, by the way, is respected by Democrats and Republicans alike, very accomplished prosecutor, saying, I think the president has a point here. Has anyone checked into this? And she said she was so concerned about it, she couldn't stop thinking about how wrong this raid may have been. That is now you have two documents that show that the raid on Mar-a-Lago.
You have to have a little bit of a bunch of sickos doing it if they're going through the Melania's underwear drawer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Maybe the effect was to embarrass the president not to carry out a lawful search warrant. But why is this significant now? There's a grand jury that is in Florida, and in order for it to bring a grand conspiracy case, it has to have two acts that occurred in Florida. We now know there are two different pieces of proof. The FBI and one of Garland's top people thinking that the raid was not righteous, not legal, not lawful, not proper. That really creates now the opportunity for Joe DeGenova and for Jason and his team down in Florida. They now have proof of a potential crime that occurred on Florida soil, which now allows them to go back and charge anything that occurred before that. So this is significant, not just from a historical footnote and to get everybody upset about the deep state. It could give the venue now for the Florida grand jury to look at the whole 10-year decade as a Florida-based crime.
Oh, that's interesting. Ed Cox.
John, the whole backdrop of this is the Presidential Records Act that was passed under Jimmy Carter, and it provides that the president always has a right, whether classified or not, to those records. While they technically belong to the archives, the president has a right to them, and that's unique to a president.
That's right. And by the way, if it was just a presidential records dispute, it normally dealt with civilly. And normally they tried to criminalize this by saying he had the same problem as Joe Biden. And what we're really seeing now is that just like Russia collusion was an effort to cover up for the fact that Hillary Clinton had a problem on Russia with Bill Clinton, when they found that Joe Biden had classified documents he should not have had all the way back to his Senate years, and they were by the Corvette at his home and in his University of Pennsylvania office, they concocted something to make it look like Donald Trump had the same problem. But the problem is President Trump had a different status. And this woman lays in fact, he says the president didn't need to follow a process. If he said they're declassified, they're declassified.
Right.
He seized on she was basically saying Donald Trump's defense was right. We didn't know that for 4 years. We were kept in the dark.
That's amazing. Judge Weinberg.
John, I'm flabbergasted by this. This is great reporting on your part. So let me tell you, as a judge who issued a lot of search warrants in my time, the agents have to come in, backed by the prosecutor. They have to show probable cause. A good judge goes through the affidavit, examines the agent, the case agent, what the basis is, and then he or she then rules whether there is probable cause to issue a warrant. So what you want to do is you want to get a hold of that supporting affidavit or affidavits that try to make out the case for probable cause and to see if there's any fraud in that.
Right. What was the claim?
No, that's what's the basis of the problem. So you want to look at, was there a material misrepresentation or fraud there? The same way that kid got the FISA court by fudging the documents.
Right, that's what I was just thinking. Same thing.
This is fascinating stuff, John. Go to it.
Somebody has to go to jail.
You're right on the money.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys, if they had no permission from anybody, and they go to Mar-a-Lago and they go through the underwear drawer. I mean, these are sickos.
Yeah, or made false representations.
No. They had the question is, John, to your point. Yeah. They had authority because they had a judicial order.
That's my question. So did they make a false representation?
Was there a fraud on the court Did they mislead the judge?
Right,
in this
because you would
context?
think a judge would go, okay, but maybe what was presented to the judge, it was not accurate.
That's exactly right.
With what actually happened.
If they represented, they had probable cause when the FBI said they didn't, and when their top legal advisor said they didn't.
Right.
That is where this is headed. And we're pretty certain from the reporting I've done since that story broke that that's exactly what Joe DeGenova and his team is focused on down in Florida. This is a pretty important story. I think it could have long-term ramifications for how the last 10 years are looked at. Was there a chronic wash, rinse, repeat cycle where the FBI and the Justice Department violated the law just to get Donald Trump, as Alan Dershowitz says, get Trump? So I think we're moving into a more serious phase of that investigation. And these pieces of evidence, and these are what they call smoking guns, I think, in a lot of common parlance.
Yeah, keep us posted.
Thank you,
this
John.
is a bombshell, John. Thank you, John. We
Great
miss
to be
you.
with you guys. Love the show, as you know.
We love you. Thank you, John, very much. Thanks a lot.